Hey there, chapter 14, part 4, I believe. Continue our discussion, and I think we'll be able to get to the questions at the end of the chapter. So we've talked about frictional unemployment, mismatch, but the jobs are there, and the people are there to fill the jobs. Structural unemployment, mismatch, because where there's demand for workers and where workers who are available to offer their services are not in the same occupations. Okay? Let's talk about seasonal unemployment. Not a big deal because it's not a social problem if the risk of seasonal unemployment is already factored in to the job. So we know that you're not going to be working all the time. So when you're working, you earn really high wages. And it's more than simply, the ski instructor has nothing to do during the summer and the surf instructor has nothing to do during the winter. You may be, for example, a union worker in the construction trades, and maybe you won't be working 2,000 hours a year on average. Maybe you'll be working 1,800 hours a year, but you get paid really well for it. So those kinds of risks that, you're going from job to job, and there's no guarantee that you're going to have long-term employment in a given job, that gets kind of baked into the analysis as well. So we don't worry about that. Cyclical unemployment, that is the topic du jour now, with the unemployment rate as high as it obviously is going to be for the month of April, and will get worse in the month of May. No question about that. Aggregate demand has gone down because it's been forced to go down. People can't buy certain goods and services. So the belief is once the lockdown orders are relaxed and the social distancing is relaxed, which appears to not going to be happening anytime soon, then there's going to be all this pent-up demand because people then will go and buy stuff that they haven't been able to buy. Tourism should be an obvious example to you, but even maybe furniture for the house and recreational activities, and a whole slew of ways in which you yourself know that you've cut down on spending. You've way increased your spending at the grocery store, but you've cut it down in most other areas other than buying a streaming product on the internet or on the TV. Okay, so aggregate demand goes down as it has. GNP is going to go down. Obviously, big Y from your macro class is going to go down. Unemployment is going to go up. Now, I mentioned in my tweet that we don't worry about wage rigidity, but I am going to talk about it a little bit. Because in theory, if we're in a situation where the economy has very low unemployment and then demand goes down, wouldn't wages go down such that then firms would be willing to hire people? Well, for one thing, firms have been forced to close here. So this is not the workings of a market economy. These are restrictions that have been placed by the actions of government at the federal level and particularly at the local level, okay? But assuming that those restrictions are lifted, okay, would we expect unemployment to go down really quickly? Okay, that's the big question. Well, and in part, the question is, are wages flexible? Are people willing with reduced demand, okay? Even if a department store opens up, they're not going to be able to accommodate as many people shopping at a given time. So the workers are not as valuable because they can't deal with as many customers at a point in time. Will they be willing to accept pay cuts? A lot of people will not be willing to accept pay cuts. So are real wages flexible? You bet. If inflation kicks in and wages stay as they are, then the real inflation-adjusted wage goes down, okay? If you're making $25 an hour and prices 2 years from now are 10% higher than they are now, but you're still making $25 an hour, your real wage has gone down because you can't buy as much as you did before. So clearly real wages are flexible, but are nominal wages flexible? If they're not, then one of the natural responses when demand goes down, firms lower prices. Well, if demand for labor goes down, would workers lower wages? Not so obvious. Okay, let me give you a few examples. Unions. They may already have contracts, and therefore they want to abide by the contract and they don't want to give in to the employer so quickly. And they're going to say, no, we negotiated this for better or worse, and we're going to stick with that to the end of the contract. Okay. But unions are a small percent of the workforce. Okay. Will a group of workers, even a union, accept wage cuts? Let's say the money going to schools has dropped dramatically because there's less revenue that's going to the state of California, and therefore they can't afford to give as much money to school districts as they did before. And the school districts say, we have smaller budgets. We can't afford to keep as many teachers as we did before. We're going to have to do a 20%, well, let's say 10% pay cut. Will teachers accept that? Only rarely. Most of the time they would say no. Why? Because how many teachers are going to get laid off? 10%, 15% of teachers get furloughed, which means 85 or 90% are still going to keep their jobs, and they're going to say, I'm going to keep my job and I'm going to keep my pay, okay? The rare exception, back about 10 years ago when we had the 2008-2009 real estate crisis, was a school district in Orange County where the teachers got together and said, we will accept a pay cut so that no one gets laid off. It's pretty rare that that actually happens. And if that being the case, then with the cyclical unemployment, it's going to be longer lived because workers are not going to be willing to adjust with the wage rate the way we normally would when there's a decrease in demand. Okay. Of course, thinking about it backwards gets kind of tough, but if demand goes down, the wage goes down. You know what I'm talking about. If employers cut wages, fewer people are going to want to train to do that job because it's not as lucrative as before. So you're going to see more turnover because people are going to get frustrated and not believe that the prospects in that job are going to be good. Okay. If people accept wage cuts early in their career, and then they talk about their salary history with a new employer, even though that's technically not legal, that may kind of frustrate their opportunities. And the final thing is, firms may come to their employees and say, we need to cut wages 15%. Yeah, you just want to add to your bottom line, and you're really not in such dire circumstances. And therefore, this is only a ploy to put more profits to the corporation. But a layoff really reveals that the company's in trouble. So there's a lot of different ways in which, unfortunately, I'm not sure the economy is going to rebound in terms of adjustments on the wage front because they are less likely to happen. Okay. A couple other issues. If workers get laid off from large firms, they may find it beneath them to go to some mom and pop shop to get a job because they think they're better than that. So people themselves now are going to adjust their the firms that they're willing to accept jobs from because of their own pride. Okay, and then and so you can see it's kind of a frustrating landscape that we're looking at here. Okay. And then finally, I want to just talk for a minute, and then we'll get to the questions at the end of the chapter about the concept of full employment. That's a macro concept that you've talked about before. That would be generally one where we have virtually no frictional unemployment because people can find jobs pretty much right away or virtually right away. The structure of the economy is always going to change, but if people are able to readjust for that, that will, of course, lower the natural rate of unemployment. And there's no cyclical unemployment, okay? The economy is at its full potential. That would be considered, full employment in your macroeconomic studies, okay? We're all over the map as to what full employment really is. More recently, we thought it was around 5%, yet we were at 3.5% before all this stuff happened. So we were very close to full employment in the economy. First time in a really long time, and obviously all of this has gone to pieces. Okay, starting on page 598, I asked you to do questions 1, 3, 4, and 7, so let's take a quick look. A rare time that 2 of them are actually answered in the back of the book, but I did want to talk about them. Question number 1, a presidential hopeful is campaigning to raise unemployment compensation benefits and lower the unemployment rate. Comment on the compatibility of these goals. I think we know this by now. Otherwise, what have you been doing for 14 weeks? If you raise the unemployment benefits, people will be out of work longer, so we'd expect the unemployment rate to go up, okay? And we're going to see that now with the government COVID response. Okay, question number 3. Recent empirical evidence suggests that unemployed workers' reservation wages decline as their spells of unemployment lengthen. So the longer you're out of work, you start kicking down that reservation wage to open up the number of jobs that are available to you, our frictional employment discussion. That is, the longer they've been unemployed, the lower the wage becomes. Explain why this might be true. Well, number 1, you may have overestimated your value in the marketplace, and as you get more data, you go ahead and reduce the wage that you think you can achieve at a minimum can achieve in the marketplace, and the expected wage will obviously go down. Another issue is, and this is a tricky issue when you're dealing with consulting in labor economics, and that is that the longer someone's been unemployed, the lower their value becomes to a potential new employer because of, number 1, your skill set might be eroding, and number 2, why have you been unemployed so long? Why haven't you been able to find a job more quickly? And so people may depreciate how they value you in a circumstance such as that. So long stints of unemployment in a thriving economy sometimes may be a red flag. In the situation we're in now, I don't think it's going to mean nearly as much, at least for a while. Okay, question number 4. Is the following assertion true, false, or uncertain? Quote, increasing the level of unemployment insurance benefits will prolong the average length of spell of unemployment. Hence, a policy of raising the benefits are not socially desirable. We've just had that discussion, and that is, it may result in a better match because you can afford economically to search a little bit longer. So it's not a no-brainer on that. Don't look at that and say, well, of course it's true. What do you want to do then? Eliminate unemployment benefits, which will lower unemployment rates, and therefore that will be a social better for the economy? Probably not. Okay. And then finally, question number 7, okay, another odd question. The employment at will doctrine, which we have in the state of California, that means you can quit whenever you want, and the employer can get rid of you whenever they want, unless they do something illegal, and then they get sued. Okay. Allows employers to discharge workers for any reason. This doctrine has generally been prevailed in the U.S., except where modified by laws preventing discrimination or union agreements. Recent policies have begun to erode the employment at will doctrine by moving closer to the notion that one's job becomes a property right that a worker cannot be deprived of unless there is a compelling reason. If employers lose the right to discharge workers without cause, what effect will this have on the unemployment rate? It'll definitely go up because now it's going to be that much harder to get rid of you. You may remember I talked about the example in France early on in the semester when we talked about unemployment, how hard it is to get rid of workers in France. So if hiring someone you know, it's going to become much more difficult to let them go. You're going to be way more selective in hiring people. So yeah, fewer people are going to be terminated, and unemployment rate may go down that way, but it's going to take a lot longer for someone to find a job, and the unemployment rate may actually go up on the other side. So is this a good thing or a bad thing? It's a complicated issue, to be sure, but don't assume that it comes completely without cost to give workers essentially property rights in their job. Okay, done. Chapter 14.